Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk some about yods. In a video last week, I brought up, somebody asked a question and wanted me to do like a video or something on answering their question, so I did. But in the video, I brought up something else in their chart that they needed to look at. I brought up the fact that they have a yod. But since the question that they had was not about the yod, I didn't go into what the yod was or what the fuck a yod is. And I got some questions about that, like, what the fuck is a yod? So, in saying that, here, let me move this out of the way because it's kind of going like crazy all of a sudden. So in saying that, I figure, in seeing comments like that, I figure I do a video about what a yod actually is. And a yod is three planets. 2 planets are sextile, and these 2 sextile planets form like an isosceles triangle, or 2 quincunx or inconjunct aspects to an apex planet, or the top of the triangle planet, or however you want. I call it the apex planet, but however you want to, whatever you want to call it. So you essentially got 3 planets. 2 of them are sextile, and then the 2 sextile planets form 2 inconjuncts to the apex planet. So depending on who you have read for you, okay, some people there is a classical or a traditional definition for a yod, and some people are pretty strict with this definition. Generally, a more traditional way to interpret yods is you want to see the apex planet being the fastest moving planet of the bunch. So, for instance, if you say had something that looked like a yod that was, say, the moon sextile Neptune, and it happened to be both of those happened to be inconjunct, say, Mars, that some people would not consider that to be a yod. Some astrologers would not consider that to be a yod because the apex planet is Mars, and the moon is also involved in the sextile, but the moon is the fastest moving planet of those 3. So there are some astrologers that would not consider that to be a yod, and that's fine. Traditionally it wouldn't be considered a yod. The fastest moving planet needs to be the yod. I am not all that traditional all of the time. So I don't necessarily have to see the fastest moving planet being the apex. I'm not that strict about it. I do think when the fastest moving planet is the apex, it probably makes it even stronger. But even seeing something like, I don't know, let's say you've got like Neptune, like the example, Neptune sextile the moon, and both of those being inconjunct Mars. Even if that's not a, quote, traditional yod, you're still going to see that, because you're still going to see that kind of play out like a yod. So I would still read it as such. I would just make mention that if they were to have a reading by somebody else, the other astrologer or another astrologer may not read it as a yod. I will explain myself so I'm not looking crazy, later on down the line. But yeah, that is essentially what it is. Depending on if you want to be more traditional with it, you can, only look at yods being the apex, having the apex planet being the fastest moving planet, or you can look at them more like I do and not be so strict with that. The one thing I will say I am a little stricter about, personally, and again, this is all up to you. If you don't want to do it like this, that's fine. But I need to see primarily planets. I've seen some questions on like subreddits and different things where somebody will have a yod with like, I don't know, they'll have Chiron and the North Node, sextile or something, and both of those are inconjunct, I don't know, let's say Mars, just hypothetically. That I probably wouldn't call a yod. It might kind of function like one, but I wouldn't call it a yod, just because we're dealing with a bunch of shit they're not planets other than Mars. Now I I do kind of like to see planets with yods. Generally speaking, I like to see planets. Maybe one asteroid. I tend to leave the nodes out of yods in a traditional sense. I would probably look at something that had the north or the south node involved. That was like the involved with something that looked like a yod. I would probably read that from a slightly different lens, just because of the nodal axis involvement, the nodes being involved. Also, I would keep, this is me personally, you may feel very different about this. I would keep the orbs tight with this. I would keep them tight. The tighter, the better. Meaning, you know, let's say you've got Mars at 24 degrees. Let's say you had Neptune at 25 degrees, Moon at 26 degrees, whatever sign. I'm not looking at an actual chart. I'm just thinking about it off the top of my head. So those degrees, that's tight. That would be tight enough for me to call it a yod. Now, if we're talking about, I don't know, let's say Mars was at like 29 degrees. Let's say Neptune was at 27, and let's say the moon was at like 22 or 23. That would be too wide. The moon at 22 or 23 and Mars at 29, that would be too wide for me to count. I probably wouldn't count this as a yod. So that the tighter the degrees to being exact, the orbs being exact, the better, I think. Okay, so getting that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about, I'll use the star cards here. I'm not going to throw in houses or signs or what, because this, like I said, this is something I'm just fucking making up. So I'm not doing all that. But okay, so you have in a yod, you've got two sextile planets. Let's say here you have, because this is a common one to see. Let's say you've got Neptune sextile Pluto, and they're both in conjunct or quincunx the moon, right? So kind of look like, you know, that, like a triangle, you know, or whatever. Okay, so the two sextile planets in a yod, they generally function, sextile is harmonious, it's cooperative, it's ease. These two planets get along well. And like in the case of Neptune and Pluto, you have, Pluto is power, it's transformation, it's a lot of other things, but we'll go with those two right now. And Neptune is a lot of things, but we'll go with, you know, like imagination and creativity. So when you've got a sextile between Pluto and Neptune, there is power in being able to create or imagine or manifest what you want. There is. These are generational, so I mean these two sextile are generational. I see these sextile often in charts because it's generational. So when you have an aspect between the two, it's going to hang around for a little bit. But so these two planets together function well, or any two sextile planets in a yod are going to function well together. Here's the thing though. Because they're both in conjunct the moon or in conjunct a planet, I'm just using the moon here as an example, but in conjunct any planet, what happens is in regards to that planet that both of those are in conjunct, they may not function, the sextile may not function at its highest capacity, at its best possible capacity, because they're not able, in conjunct aspects don't see one another. There's an issue with seeing. Meaning Neptune in conjunct the moon, Neptune and the moon don't see each other. Same thing with Pluto in conjunct the moon. Pluto and the moon don't see each other. So you've got these two planets down here, Neptune and Pluto, are manifesting and creating, and they've got this power to do this, but it's like because they don't see the moon as the apex when they're doing this, so it gets left out. And oftentimes with in conjuncts, in conjunct aspects, what happens is in a normal, just regular in conjunct with just, you know, not counting a yod for a second, just a regular in conjunct, you'll have two planets that don't see each other. And what ends up happening is one planet might be felt sometimes, the other planet might be felt at other times, but they're not often felt together, and that's the problem. So you could have somebody who really leans into one planet and can really feel one planet, and the other planet gets totally neglected. Or they just can't feel them together. Both planets can't see each other. So when you have a yod, you've got these two planets in the sextile part on the base that can see one another, but the moon gets left out. So that's kind of what happens with the yod, and why they're kind of difficult. They're thought of as, they're called like the finger of God, and a lot of times it's because the person feels like they don't have a lot of control over the apex planet because it's not seen. It is not seen. And depending on what's going on with the sextile, and until it sees that apex planet, it's not going to function in the best possible way for the person or for the planet that's not being seen. So it's important, if you have a yod, it's important to understand the apex planet. Very important to understand the apex planet. It might have more of a tendency of not being seen the way that it should be, because you're not just talking about one planet that doesn't see it, you're talking about two. So that apex planet may really not get seen at all, meaning whatever's happening at the sextile, it's just not functioning in the best possible way. It may function harmoniously, but it's not functioning in the best possible way. Generally, that's not universal. None of this is universal, but there's generally something going on with that. Now, with yods, there is something called a stress point. It is the midpoint between the two sextile planets, or opposite the apex planet. Some people might actually have a planet there. If you do, you've got what's called a boomerang yod. That actually makes the yod more stable and easier to work with if you've got a planet at the stress point, because the opposition will help you find balance. Because that's what oppositions want to do. They want to balance, whereas the inconjunction, they don't see. So it's actually a good thing if you have something there. If you have a planet at the stress point, it's a good thing. If you have a planet at the stress point, you need to understand that fucking opposition really, really well. It will help you a lot. If you don't have a planet at the stress point, you should watch for transits to the stress point. Transits to the stress point will kind of light the yod up. Also, transits to the apex planet will kind of light the yod up. Now, depending on what's going on in your chart, this could literally be any planet. I would probably think the heavier transits are going to be more important in this way, but it really would depend on your whole chart as to what planets might really light the fuck out of that yod, light it up, kind of helping it maybe to feel seen, the apex planet to feel seen, or in some cases it might make you feel like you've really completely lost control of the apex planet. I would definitely, if you have a yod in your chart, I would definitely watch transits to both the stress point and to the apex. I certainly would. But yeah, this is, oh yeah, and in the Star Cards book, if you're interested, we do talk about this under the aspect pattern part. So yeah, it is talked about. So, but yeah, I'm gonna get going. Hopefully this helps for anybody that has yods. If you have any questions, let me know. But I'm gonna get going. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Apaterno Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like or subscribe or whatever the fuck people do with videos on YouTube, you can find us by searching for Let's Fuck With Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.